4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
The storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to another Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It is a Sunday night. We're recording this for episode 238. Yes, folks,
Woo.
we have made it to 238. And I say this every week, and I'm amazed every week that we keep going. I would have thought by now either we would have burned out or been dead or something to that effect. I don't know.
This may be the only thing keeping us alive at this point.
It might be. You never know. It depends on if Trump gets in. Tonight
don't say that.
Is the two hostess with the mostess, Mr. Hannaberry and Buddy the Lumberjack. How are you all tonight, sirs?
Decent.
Well fed.
A reminder, cops should not kill innocent or guilty people.
Yeah.
Word.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this every week.
Yeah,
every week.
This another lesson in
Good intro.
duh.
Yeah,
The
the fact that people they'll cry tyranny over being told that you have to wear a mask because people around you are getting sick and dying or suffering and wishing they were dying. That's tyranny, but cops killing somebody because random coincidence and then afterwards it's found out that they're a criminal. There's some cognitive dissonance on that one. You might want to go home and put your thinking toque on.
What's a toque? For those of us in the audience who aren't Canadian.
Oh God, I forgot that's one of the words that doesn't always. You know the hats that you wear in winter, like the cap thing.
Cousin Eddie.
Some of them have a pom pom.
You just mean a winter hat. It's a winter hat, buddy. It's a freaking winter hat. Do we need to have a Canadian versus American hat segment, like where we put a hat on the screen and you have to say it in American and Canadian?
Maybe. I've always heard
apparently,
but...
Oh God! Apparently, the word toque actually goes back to toque. It generally means knit cap. There we go.
I feel a little bit better.
Apparently, according to this quick Wikipedia article that I googled real quick here, it was toques were popular from the 13th to the 16th century in Europe, and we've just appropriated the word.
I don't know. The word sounds like a slur of some kind. I don't know why.
Well, you want to know what I thought it was? Let me show you all what I thought it was.
Oh God.
Worried. Get the censor button. Somebody,
but the button.
Somebody is.
That's onesie. Like when you say toque, I thought you were shortening Tanuki suit. I'm sitting here like, who in Canada is running around suit? Like a raccoon? Who? A brown one too. Of
children.
All things.
Children. I don't know.
Because raccoons can fly, don't you know? That is such a confusing part of a Mario's history.
Yeah, I always wanted
the raccoon tail to fly.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have.
All your base belong to us.
They are something. Yeah.
And some of it is because if you think about it, there is this show on Netflix. I don't know if you guys have watched it or not, but it's like a mini series on the origins of video games, and it's an amazing. If you have not seen it, it's called High Score. It's amazing. It's worth every minute of your life.
That's not the one that has the. Or no, that was the Pac-Man guy, or whatever. They had the world record dude or something.
Yes, it's that one.
It is okay.
That's one of the episodes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I saw a whole documentary about it.
It's a she. Thank you.
Oh no, this was the old. It was the old one. There was someone. There was like a battle. Like someone was trying to be like the winner, and there was a guy that had it for the longest time and was like considered like a rock star, and they proved that he had cheated or something. It was like
Oh,
this
no,
like
no, no,
fall
no.
from
This
grace.
that's not it. No, no, no.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
no, no.
There was it wasn't in the documentary, but it was like the high score, some Pac-Man King or some Donkey Kings, one of those older games where it was like who could have the high score, and like some of those games how they don't have an ending, like they didn't make an ending for the game. It just keeps going in levels and goes and goes and goes, but. And it just random generates. There's some really cool stuff about those cool games. I don't know. Maybe I'll try to see if I can find the thing I'm thinking of, because there was a game that was created and it randomly generated the levels so that it could never run out. And the mechanics and everything that they used in there are so unique, and nobody from the original development is still alive. They don't know how they did it, and there's people like trying to figure it out, because it's a type of algorithm in a cartridge that could only have 8 bits of information, and it can do things that like they cannot get random number generators and stuff to do now. It's a really cool story. I'll have to look it up. Maybe that could be a quick save in the future.
Fair enough. So tell everybody quickly, how was your week? Either one of you. So I could go on for an hour because my week has gone crazy, but let's hear from the two of you.
We'll talk, and then you'll take over. My week wasn't too bad. I mean, finally my work is calming down. I'm just getting frustrated that my boss won't hire me any more help at this point, and is dragging his feet because he dragged his feet on other things that would really help my team, and he's trying to fix those, and they're more of a priority, which I mean I understand, because if he doesn't fix those, the company can't make money, can't pay us, and all of that. It would just be nice had he not dragged his feet in the first. But you know, we all know the shit rolls downhill, right? And other but I didn't have to put in overtime, which was nice. I actually got to come home and do chores instead of doing overtime, then coming home doing chores and wanting to die.
Yeah, that's one of the things about my new work is that like I do 45 hours a week, 9 hours a day, and 1 hour of that is basically lunch. So like it's a good amount of work. I'm working, and like it just everything's nice, and like my neighborhood and everything. We didn't do anything this weekend. I worked on the yard and organized a shed, and just it was a nice weekend just home. We video chatted with grandparents and my parents, and all of that, just like home stuff, family, just doing the things, but a light laid back weekend with 2 crazy animals that I live with. Not the dogs, by the way. My daughters are just they're just at like a level of like kinetic energy where they like it's almost perfect resonance, where the 2 of them somehow can blend in together to make an unbelievable amount of energy. And so it's a lot of work just keeping them under control, but it's been summer's winding down. It's darker longer. All my pepper plants are doing good and starting to change colors. It's until the voting season starts here, I think it's going to be a relatively enjoyable early fall. We'll see how it goes. I'm guessing It's going to get nasty real quick, but I don't know. Mayfield, where I live, is it's an interesting town, and so I mean, Ohio is a place that I'm not entirely used to, but it's getting there. So like in 2 minutes, I can be to what I would call McMansions, and then in 2 more minutes the other direction, I can be to a 2,000 or 3,000 unit apartment complex. So like we have huge variations in diversity in the area. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's a cool town.
So my thing essentially was I ended up at a rally on Saturday to help kind of push forward some of the Democratic candidates in Michigan. So essentially, if y'all don't know, I've been working closely with one of my local candidates, helping build the website, getting some social media stuff going, getting signs out, petitioning. But so Saturday, I ended up going to the rally with him with all these other local candidates for the Democratic ticket. So that was kind of fun, but that was 3 hours standing in the rain. Then we went back to his house afterwards, ate some tacos, and then, we worked on building a business card, what they call a palm reader, which, by the way, every time he would say palm reader, I'm sitting here going, I'm not going to do this, man. Like, I'm sorry, I'm done. Like, there's certain things I'll do for you, and I can ignore the religious side that you are, but I'm not going to, what's this palm reader thing? And he's like, that's what they call if you hold a brochure in the palm of your hand. And I'm like, that's the dumbest name I've ever heard in my whole life. But okay, fine. It's a political term, whatever.
So
moving
like
on.
someone who reads tracts?
No. It's literally just a infomercial on a piece of paper that fits in your hand. That's used for canvassing and different things. But they call it a palm reader because it's the size of your palm.
Oh. I would have just gone with pamphlet or something, but I guess.
But no, they want to make sure it's the size of your palm. So anyway, so I spent quite a bit of time at his house rebuilding some of his old stuff. And we're gonna test it this week, printing it ourselves and seeing how well it goes. So my life has been spent dealing with campaign stuff, weirdly enough. But the exciting thing is, because I was at the rally, I got to get a special sign today that I was not happy to put in my yard, but I was happy to get. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris now have a sign in my yard. Weirdly enough.
I mean, I get it, and I'd give you a hug if I could, because just hearing that, I can hear the heartbreak that you have to go with that, because it's the best option. And I want you to know that I support you, and I'm proud of you for being willing to bite the bullet like that, because that's just, sorry, that is just, it's so painful. So painful that's your only option.
I've got my Bernie sign, and I'm thinking about actually doing the duct tape and changing it to Biden, like they have in all those memes. I'm actually thinking of doing that. Yeah, there's says they changed Bernie to Biden, and it's like sure or whatever or something after it. I don't know. It's a pretty cool little thing. So I might just switch that over, because I mean my street is it's Trump heavy. It's really hard. There's two of those colorful Black Lives Matter, water is important, like science is real. Have you seen those signs? Where it's just like a nice little text box with a bunch of stuff on it. It's just like Black Lives Matter, water is life, science is real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a nice little thing, and it's everything on it is good and simple. It's nice. There's two of those on the street, and when I walk by those houses, I just feel like going and hug somebody. Because two houses down, there's a giant Trump sign that says "No more bullshit." Literally.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? And you just want to go, why are you putting this up in my neighborhood? My kids can read. My kids can read that, right?
And then just like I keep saying that keep it great, or keeping it great 2020.
Yeah,
I've been looking around for the last 4 years. I haven't seen a whole lot of great.
I have one thing that I noticed about American politics. The last few years, the winning president has had a kind of a key phrase, but it's rarely more, like it's usually almost always 3 syllables. That's simple. Like when Obama was running, yes, we can. Trump was running, what the hell was it?
Make America Great Again?
No, there was lock her up. That was the rallying cry. So it's a 3-syllable rallying cry. Like, is that like common in American politics? Like, if we kind of start watching a lot of older videos, are we going to notice that there's this 3-syllable rallying cry? Because that terrifies the shit out of me, that it is that easy to kind of bring that together. And yeah, I know I started seeing KAG on all these Patriot Twitter profiles, because when I see somebody say something that I'm like, I can't tell if like this where you're coming from with this. So I'll like just look at their bio on Twitter just so I can know whether or not it's a waste of my time to even try arguing, or if there's something that I can add or whatever. And then I kept seeing hashtag KAG and hashtag Patriot and the American flag and all of that. And I'm just like, what the hell does that mean? So I looked it up, and KAG, keep America great. And then, of course, you can boil that down to keep it great. So Biden, get on that. 3-syllable rallying cry. You have less than 2 months to do this. He botched the pandemic and tried to blame everybody around him. You have an easy way to do this. Just figure it out. That's why you're a politician. That's your job. But anyways,
Yeah, it reminds me of a actually a quotation from Christopher Hitchens, and he says he basically talks about this is literally a direct quote. It took me a second to find it. Pretty soon we should be able to get the electoral politics down to a basic newspeak that contains perhaps 10 words. Dream, fear, hope, new people, we change America, future together. Fishing exclusively from this tiny stagnant pool of stock expressions, it ought to be possible to drive all thinking people away from the arena and leave matters to the gnarled but capable hands of the professional wordsmiths and manipulators. In the new jargon, certain intelligible ideas would become inexpressible. How could one state, for example, the famous Burkean principle that many sorts of change ought to be regarded with skepticism? In a rather poor trade-off for this veto on complexity, many views are expressible, and we the this is this is it, and we the people together dream of hope and change. Or for new change in America would really quite a long sentence in the latest junk language, will in turn be entirely and indeed almost beautifully unintelligible. Like, that's one of my favorite quotes. Hitchens. It was a Slate article, and it's like he basically years ago said like it is a Orwellian language control that each time it gets shorter and it gets dumber and it gets more general, more broad, and eventually like Obama had hope, and then there was whatever.
Yes,
and it's like, and it's just like, I don't know. It's part of American politics. It's a simplification so that we don't have to deal with complexity.
You'll have to send me that.
Yeah, Mike in the chat said, and this kind of dates me, honestly.
Oh man, I remember
George Bush Sr. said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." So, to answer your question, buddy, yes, we are very simplistic people, I think. I don't want to say that it's anything.
Our media
I just
machines
think
are.
that we have very polarizing politics in America.
Yeah.
And I think I can't sit there and tell you that it's all just an American thing, but I can tell you that we do take these more aggressive. And then if you look at kind of what's the characters, once some of these characters get on stage, it just becomes even more of a, not a luxury, but specifically more of a, debacle that they try and, push into each of us. Right. And honestly, over the last 8 years, that's exactly what that is. We've gotten way too much people trying to shorten what really is, a bigger point down to 6 words, right?
Yeah, it's terrible, but it's
it's
what we do. Well, yeah, I mean, you
I-
think about like how all politics is done on Twitter now. Like,
Ooh.
you know what I mean? Like, it's one of the reasons why I've never liked Twitter in the first place, is because you can because people do the sequencing now.
Yeah.
Simplifying stuff.
Yeah.
Ooh,
What was that? Politics is show business or something? Is that what this is?
And that's honestly just as true as it gets these days, because now it's not about who's the best spoken and seems to have the best ideas. It's who can quickly drum up the most populist support base, and that's all it is. And it's just amazing what a stranglehold the conservatives have on that, and it frustrates me so much, because it's like, if they're more in favor of like the free market, well, the free market favors whoever can sell the best, not whoever has the best product, but whoever can just sell something the best. And they have it down to a science, and they do get cranky when we kind of beat them at it and cancel some of their businesses and crappy business policies. But at the end of the day, they can reach the biggest and most impactful and most infuriatingly uneducated base, because they're the largest base is the people with the least amount of money and access to proper education and healthcare and all of that, and all they want is just somebody who's going to let them live out their lives, work, and then retire. And
it's an invisible case system. I mean, So we got
It's-
Republican questions today? Oh, man.
Yeah. So our
do.
new segment, answering Republican questions. This one's kind of a little bit easier one. Probably won't be very long of a discussion. But there's a gentleman I used to work with, who will remain nameless, but he's still on my Facebook page. Weirdly enough, I thought I drove him off, but he never disappeared, which is fine because in fairness, he's a pretty he is a big Trump supporter, but he's a pretty moderate Republican when it comes to them. So we don't disagree on everything, I guess, and he's not a name caller. We'll just put it that way. He is not a name caller. But so he posted on his Facebook today, I've noticed that many of my liberal friends are very vocal regarding their desire for Trump to lose, but not so much with wanting Biden to win. I find this interesting. So essentially his question is, why is why are people so emphatic about defeating Trump but not so emphatic about who the candidate is? So in my world, so I didn't respond to him because I wanted to use this for the show, but in my world, the way I look at it is I'm not enthusiastic about the candidate, but I can accept the moderate conservative views that this gentleman has because I know what it'll mean is that the escalation of aggressiveness, the escalation of name calling, the escalation of desire to harm other people that don't believe like him, and a desire to maybe at least pretend to put their foot forward for the community.
Yeah.
That's what I'm voting for. Even though in the long run, he's not my candidate. But, like I said earlier, I went to a rally on Saturday, and it's one of those things. That was a discussion that came up. And there is a gentleman, and I can't, his name was John, and he's on one of the boards for the Ottawa County Dems, right? Great guy. And he had a very fiery speech that basically said, here we go. I know you all don't want, Biden. I don't want him either. But I'm telling you what, right now, if we don't take and put him in office, we're doing people like John Lewis a disservice, Martin Luther King a disservice. We're doing all this whole civil rights movement that happened a disservice because of the fact that we have somebody that essentially is working towards trying to help repeal some of those things. So when we talk about not being excited for Biden, you're right. But I could tell you what, he's not going to send National Guard in and threaten to kill protesters. He's not going to do that. We got that from this president. We're not going to get the dissension where he's tweeting Blue Lives Matter quotes. Happened today, this morning.
Oh, of course
We're not going to
it is.
get that out of Biden. And whether Biden supports us in the long run in that avenue is yet to be seen. But at least he's not going to continue to try and escalate and create, even if it's just a war on words, he's not going to create this. And that's the biggest thing that we could say, fine, you're right. Not excited to vote for Biden. Wouldn't be my first choice. But if he's the one that can get enough votes from the people voting for Trump, he's got my vote.
For me, and Biden, it's the same series of arguments we made for voting for Hillary Clinton in 2016 when we had show after show after show warning and worrying about King Trump and all of the problems that he would take the title of king in a moment, and he would take a Putin-like when I'm done, I'll leave type politic. And so when you look at what Biden is going to be and what Biden is, what Biden has always been, he is basically the embodiment of the problematic American political system. But Trump is the embodiment of the death of the American political system. He is top-down, authoritarian. And if you look at the time it takes, you mentioned the John Lewis effect and everything, the time it took, the time it takes to make major progress, decades. But the time it takes to cut that progress down, moments, with the stroke of a pen and a president who doesn't understand how hard people work to get to that point. And it doesn't happen very often. And we see, this identity politics where the conservatives love to call liberals these snowflakes who will jump on and whine and complain about everything, but you hear the exact same arguments, sometimes even stronger from the conservatives who are willing to align with someone who particularly supports their views, almost to an end that I don't understand. I mean, we are so past ethical, moral behavior. Biden is going to be a globalist. He's going to be a centrist. He's going to be a diplomatic, big businessman. All the people that are going to be doing things in his administration would be people that we would have disagreed with Clinton, people that we would have disagreed with and George Bush Sr. and Jr., and people that we have disagreed with in the Obama administration. Like, all of those people from like the American political machine will be in the Biden campaign, in the Biden administration. Like, we don't like that. But again, those are things that over time have progressed the entire planet. And in just 4 years, you look at the number of things that Trump has destroyed so quickly, things that took decades to build when it comes to geopolitical collateral growth and stuff. Like, if you want stable and maybe not the most progressive or liberal or speedy humanistic campaign, you have to go with, the centrist in this case. Like, you may not get the perfect candidate, and that's what it is. Like, Biden and Harris are going to be pro police, they're going to be pro law and order because that's just who they are. But I mean, the level of anti-poor, anti-minority that you get from the conservative demagogue right now, because that's what he is something you can't escape. And there's no way I could ever stand back and not vote for the leading candidate to take him down. I don't care who it would be. It doesn't matter who on any of the progressive side, when it came to the third parties or whatever, whoever it was, Jill Stein, Gary Johnson, I don't care if they're not Trump. That's basically what it is. It's anybody but Trump in this case. And I mean, within reason, but that's really what it is. You can't be enthusiastic, but I don't know. Keith, you don't have to vote for Biden. But I'm assuming that you can pretty much understand this, and you may have an example that's comparatively parallel in England. In mini England.
We're the second largest country on the earth. You calm yourself, Mr. Atlas Inflator.
Yeah, but you mush all those people into like 2 cities in the U.S.
Exactly. I mean, exactly. You guys are, you might hold a technical title of the second largest country, but you're really not.
Hey,
like,
if Russia keeps on shrinking, then we'll be first. And if this whole global warming thing keeps up, then the North Pole is going to melt, and then we'll really not take first. So keep it up. Santa's going to drown. Yeah, that should be how we get the kids on board with this. If you keep global warming up, then Santa will drown.
The kids are on board with global warming.
Man, now you sound
grandma
like
and grandpa who aren't.
Oh crap! Never mind. We'll take that. Can I take that back? No. Okay. I'm moving on. Actually, Hannah, you weren't here the first episode. I was talking about Canada, and I was saying that Canada, although it is geographically larger than the States, but you could take the population of California and put that in the rest of the United States, and that's the population density of Canada, literally. Anyway, so why is Biden better than Trump? Well, I mean, I used to actually have a 3-word answer for this, and now I have another thing that I can add to that list to keep it, down to 2 items.
Weren't you criticizing Americans earlier for having 3-word?
I know, right?
Rhetoric, and now you got 3-word rhetoric. It sounds
I was
like
taking advantage
you're
of it.
American or Canadians are almost the same.
3 words versus 3 syllables. Okay.
Let's go linguist. Let's hear the Shakespearean quotation.
So originally, my argument was the Supreme Bloody Court, because if Trump gets another 4 years, he's likely going to have at least one more seat that he can fill with another Scalia wannabe.
RGB
which is
like
hanging by that poor woman. I'm pretty sure she is hanging on out of spite at this point. Like, the thing running through her veins that is keeping her alive is sheer spite for the fact that if she goes, Trump will have he'll wet himself with excitement in front of everybody, and everybody will lap it up
McConnell.
because he's into that sort of thing. Her health isn't great. We need somebody better or we need somebody who can step up and keep social progress from going back 50, 60, 70 years, because let's face it, if we get another blubbering rapist on the bench there, if you yeah, exactly. If you get another wannabe Scalia on the bench, there goes Roe v. Wade, there goes protections, there goes religious, what everybody likes to think of as religious freedom, but really there's religious protection now. Public funding for religion, and if you don't belong to that religion, well, sucks to suck. But the next one that I have, this is a tweet that was sent out 2 days ago. Sorry, it's the 13th now. 3 days ago, and I'm gonna quote here: Kim Jong-un is in good health. Never underestimate him. So your president cares more about a dictator who kills and tortures his own people than he does the hundreds of thousands that have died under him.
180.
Think about that. 180,000
now. Is it 190 now? It was 180 last I heard.
So basically, your president doesn't give a shit about people, and it's proven right there. Right there, he does not care. You don't even need the tapes of him completely ignoring and being naive about the potential damage. All you need to know is that he cares more about a dictator who has no problem executing people, who has completely cut his country off, who will starve his own people to get other countries to give him what he wants. That's what Trump cares for. That's what Trump's priority is. Don't tell me that just because Biden's problematic. Don't get me wrong. That's a whole other issue. But let's not whataboutism away from the fact that Trump does not care about his citizens.
Fair enough, man. I mean, 60 times the number of people that died in 9/11 have died from COVID. 60 times.
And I can't. I'm struggling to wrap my brain around how people can be so blind to that, and how you can go through so many of these tweets and people are like, November 3rd, it's going to be a landslide. And it's like, it wasn't a landslide at all. He won on a technicality. So that's proof that it's winning at any cost.
It's more proof that for the Democrats to win, like a 3,000 vote majority still lost last time. This needs to be an absolute, just an open and shut, complete and total slam. Otherwise, this is going to be nasty.
That's putting it mildly.
I know.
Well, before we go too far, I want to bring up voter registration deadline. So we have a link in the description for anybody that is not registered to vote yet. You still have a little bit of time. Not all of them are set. I know we've shared this before, but again, I'm going to share it again. One of the concerns that actually came out of the rally is that if your state offers straight ticket party voting, and this is happening, I guess, in Michigan right now. So if you are offered straight ticket party voting, so you vote straight ticket for Democrats, and then you hop over, and let's say there's a very local seat that you are going to vote for, and they have no Democratic candidates. If you choose one or two of them on the Republican side, you have invalidated your vote. Now, I don't know how much this happened. I don't know if there's a study that shows this. I did no research. All I know is that came up, and I thought that was an interesting thing, to kind of, we don't need to talk about it, but I just think it's an interesting thing to know, right? So there's that. The other big thing here is like in Michigan, it's 15 days before the election, you have to be registered. So if you are not registered to vote, I'm pretty sure every social media that you belong to, unless it's the dark web, is telling you to get off your ass and vote. So I keep getting pop-ups on Discord, for Christ's sake. And it's like, Discord, I've already been registered for the last, 15 years. So please stop.
It's fine. I love seeing that stuff everywhere and anywhere and even more places. I like seeing it when I blink. I don't care if everyone is involved and everyone is voting, it's always better. Even if it doesn't, I mean, it hurts to say this, but even if it doesn't go your way, even if the country itself chooses Donald Trump again, as long as the people are involved in the system, it's always going to be better. I can't see how the more people voting is going to go conservative like that for Trump, because statistically that doesn't seem to be the case. But if everyone votes, it's always a better thing. You know what I mean? Like, just if people are involved in the process, one, it'll at least get you involved in your locals. That's when we were talking about for the straight ticket thing. That's another thing. They tried to actually ban or block or remove straight ticket voting because they were saying, well, it's too easy. You go in there, you check one box at the top that says Democratic Party, Republican Party, straight ticket. You have it across the board. So it doesn't take, 3, 5, 10, 15 minutes to vote. You one bubble, in and out, you're done. And in places where you have 2, 3, 4 hour waits and stuff like that, like having one bubble click can speed things up, and it's a really good idea. In certain cities, and I believe in Detroit, they were trying to stop that, which is, people were like, you're going to make this take even longer. And it was a really big deal. And so, like, the straight ticket stuff, but you also need to pay attention. It's like, if you do vote at all across the party line, that does invalidate your ballot, which is a huge problem. It's a confusion in all those rules. When people aren't involved, you can miss that. I mean, if you miss it, you're it's just like you didn't even mail in your absentee ballot. I mean, that's what it's like. It sucks.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, on to the big thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, and I think this is kind of important, even more so, I guess, than registering. I guess not. Just kidding. But it is very important because, and it's not because I'm now involved in trying to help somebody get elected in local politics. It's more or less because there's an interesting correlation that is starting to happen that I've noticed through some of these articles, where when we talk about who gets elected to local governments, to the Congress, to this and that, and we always push locally, what are we going to do, right? But when these things started to happen, is there a correlation to electing a president, right? So if, in this case, in this instance, if Michigan goes Republican for the majority of Senate votes, right, does that mean we're going to go Republican for the president? And I think that's a very interesting correlation a little bit, because I don't think that I never thought originally it was a big connected thing, other than people like to vote inside their party. But at the exact same time, when you get down to these minuscule, minute elections, like, again, we have no Democratic in Ottawa County for running for city offices. Like, they don't exist. And the more interesting thing is there was a judge that I kept seeing pop up, right? And her sign is right next to every Trump sign for the most part. And the funny thing was, I was at this rally on Saturday. Guess who shows up?
She did.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here going, why are you here? Because I keep seeing your sign next to Trump signs. And they let her speak for 10 minutes, and she basically gives her nonpartisan speech, but she's talking about how she was an immigrant, right? And how she came here and was with migrant parents and had to work her way through the system to become a lawyer, all these other things, and how she wants to work with the community of Holland specifically, to make it better. And then after she finishes her speech, the Democratic Party gets up and says, oh, by the way, we've endorsed you as of, yesterday. And essentially, she just got endorsed by the Democratic Party. So now you're sitting here, she's got her name out there. And, there was a question in the chat, or a discussion in the chat kind of, that talks about how do we push people from out of our Democratic Party and kind of shift it to a more leftist party, right? Or do we just create a new leftist party? How do we do those things? And there's strategies that people have been using, I guess, for a long time, which will have to be a whole nother segment, because I think that's an interesting discussion, but I would like to research that a little bit more before I get into it. But just looking at that, she used that strategy to some extent, right? She went after and basically said, I'm neutral, here we go. And then next thing you know, she comes back and it's like, oh yeah, I'm at a Democratic rally, and oh, by the way, this is who I am. And she, but she does weird little tactics. Like, she's like, I'm not going to get my last name on my sign. And she makes a joke, oh, it's because it doesn't fit. But it's because she's Hispanic, and her last name is not just like Venesquez or something like that. It's not like some short name. Like, when she rattles it off, it's like a very long hyphenated, name.
Yeah.
And the neat thing about, her appearance and some of the topics and discussion that she was talking about is that you don't have to be partisan, and especially when you're looking at a judge. You just got to be fair. That's all that it matters, is that we're giving everybody an equal opportunity, fair chance. And if you can't support that from both sides, we got a problem.
If you're a judge, you're supposed to be impartial. Like, that's the whole thing you're running on, is you're supposed to apply the law. You know what I mean? Like, that's why the Supreme Court stuff, like, they're appointed by whatever party is in charge, presidential appointments, but like, they're supposed to be impartial. That's one of the things, like, if you look at your local elections, you look at a lot of that kind of stuff, like, they should be in the middle somewhere, because they're trying to say, I'm going to represent the people and the law. I'm not going to represent the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, because the judicial branch is supposed to be separate as a check and balance to the legislature. And so these are things that are standard. And this is another great example of, in that area where you are, where the bootstrap argument, guess what? The bootstrap argument comes to an immigrant. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's something that an immigrant says, you know what, I did pull myself up on my bootstraps, and I came here and I made it work. So that means that by logical standards, that conservatives should be proud and happy that someone who came across the border, who came into this country, and I'm assuming she probably did it more legal than a lot of other people have done. But in the end, this is an immigrant, someone from outside who came in and made it work. And so, like, their arguments that immigrants are stealing jobs and they're lazy and all those kinds of things that you hear, they're invalid when they use, their own bootstraps and they work out. It's like, it's an interesting thing that if you look at local ballots and local elections and the people running in those positions, it's in the middle where we all kind of sort of do agree. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Green Party, Libertarians. There is a really, really wide area where everyone genuinely agrees. And then what you hear on the partisan spectrum, the political mainstream stuff, that's where people disagree. So, like, if you look at the basics of, like, what we all kind of want, our personal local elections and stuff, we really do agree on a ton of stuff. And Democrats and Republicans overlap like crazy. But that oppositional binary situation is what drives it so hard on the national scale. So presidential elections are like blood, death, murder, kill. But like you have to search to find out what party affiliation a lot of local politicians are representing. I had all the people that I'm going to be voting for. I had to literally look at their site, dig in, and even go to vote.org to find out what party they're affiliated with. Like, it's not displayed because they're appealing to the whole as opposed to partisan, tactics back and forth. So, like, that local stuff that you're talking about, it's so much better than the national politics, in my opinion. I think it's great. And if everyone get involved in it, politics would leave so much better of a taste in your mouth. I really think it would be better for everyone if they were locally, and then the national stuff. But.
And here's the thing. So in my district, for that House of Representative, just for the state, there's 97,000 eligible voters. Less than 40% actually voted in 2016. Less than 40% voted in 2016. And that's probably high, if we look at the rest of the country, right? I mean, I don't remember. We'd have to, there you go, buddy. Buddy, you'll look that up for me and tell me what percentage of the nation voted in 2016 in the presidential election in the United States, not in Canada. And, but the idea here is when we look at this and we talk to those people, how do you get the rest of those people engaged? Well, here's a great article that actually talks about how there's 99 state legislative chambers altogether, and 86 of those chambers are holding elections in 2020. That's a lot.
Mhm.
That's a ton right there, right? The majority of the chambers are Republican and Democratic are, the minority, obviously. So 61 versus 37. So when we talk about the shift, and this is kind of where this part of the segment begins, where does the shift happen? Can we swing these 37 chambers? And I could tell you, like, for example, in Holland, my biggest question is why do we not hold politics accountable? So at least one thing we can say for Trump, you know, is that he's at least communicating with the public, right? In fairness, whether we like it or not, he doesn't shut up. He's having a wannabe town hall all the time with the American public, if you think about it, because he's constantly giving out his information, his opinion, and somewhat soliciting it back. And
Mhm.
when we go to local politics, how many people are doing town halls in the middle of the day when people are working? How many times are they doing no town halls? I'll give you an example. Huizinga in Michigan has
Yeah.
not had a town hall for any position he's held ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Think about that.
God, that guy frustrated me so bad. Yeah.
So when we talk about these things and we look at this, this article right here talks about, partisan balances, your state senates versus your state houses. And they actually kind of talk about all the different, elections and things like that. And this graph is very telling, right? Here you can see we come down, and it's kind of funny because in 2008, obviously Obama was elected president, and all of a sudden you start seeing all of these districts go down, and the Republicans started surging up. But Obama did not win, or did win again, in 2012.
Yeah.
So even though the Democrats lost all of these local things,
Well, 2012. So 2012 was I don't know if you guys have heard of some of the strategic stuff that they did when it came to the gerrymandering, when it came to specifically putting certain money into very, very specific campaigns. And 2012 was the year where they did that. And then in 2014, also not as effectively, but in 2012, there was a campaign, a Republican campaign strategist who, using a series of mathematical tools, created a system to find where to put money for all of the swings that were possible. And so you had all these local elections that all of a sudden would see $1 million, like just in billboards, blanket the city, and it would be just crazy stuff, or it would be completely unverified. And because local elections, who's really doing fact checking in there? And the Republican strategist, like, they changed the way they did it. It was kind of like the movie Moneyball, when the Oakland A's started using statistics and analysis to predict and really figure out who would be the better performers in baseball. They started doing this with politicians and campaigns, and much to the very, very strong effect. Like, if you look at that down section there, that's Mitch McConnell and basically Republicans just drastically out strategizing the Democrats since 2012 to now. It's a solid 8 years, but I would argue even in 2010 it wasn't particularly strong there either. It's just so frustrating to see people just complacent, and that's where we are right now with all the local elections and stuff with the Democrats. They're still trying to catch up to the local politics machine that the Republicans created, and it's very, very effective. That's why getting in local is really important, because that's the swing, right? That's the most important part for your local elections, and what your life is going to be like. It's going to be those people that are going to be making those decisions.
Well, and it kind of takes me. I'm going to show this real quick, and this is maybe a little more niche-y here.
Jason. Hope you guys enjoy this fanfic, and without
and I don't want to listen to his thing, but here you go. Jar Jar Binks as a Sith Lord, right? And so I don't know if again, maybe this is just me as a Star Wars nerd, talking about this, but if you think about it, Jar Jar is the one that essentially gave Palpatine unlimited power to some extent, right? So everybody always says here, maybe he's really a Sith Lord. In the long run, he really can't because of the rule of two. But the bigger thing, honestly, is the fact that like he's just a bumbling individual. And he reminds me of who was that candidate? He was the first Democrat that I was supposed to vote for that I didn't. John Kerry. Jar Jar Binks and John Kerry are like two in the same. Very wish-washy, very annoying to listen to. That's like who he always reminds me of. But the funny thing here, right, is that we could sit here and blame him, but in the essence, I think it's because he was just outplayed, right? You know, like when you look at, I get that it's a story, but he was outplayed. And that's like what you were saying is the Democrats have been outplayed for far too long now. And how do we fix that? I think one of the big things, right, that we could talk about is getting money out of politics. But that's a whole 2-hour segment that we're all just going to kind of shake hands and agree on. Really. But when you look through all these different things, and I don't want to spend too long on this one article, but they'll actually show you the difference in your state, right? So they explain how many total seats for the different areas. They explain where they're at, what's the split difference, all of that. And I think it's informative for you to go through each of these states and look at that, because that's where you have to start to push your neighbors, your friends, all these other people to vote.
Yeah, they had I don't know, buddy, just chase it down, but basically 2016 election was the lowest in presidential
in 20 years
turnout. Yeah.
It was 55.4%.
Yeah, that was 55.4% was the total for 2016. In 1996, it was 53.5. That was the last time it was that low. I can't stress it enough, is that young people and independents just simply didn't turn out. It really was that simple.
Well,
and that's that. I mean, you've seen the numbers, you've seen a lot of that stuff. It's just, those are the people, and it really has been shown statistically that those are the people who really needed to be like, listen, we really do need to buckle it up. And now we're in the same boat, and those same people are the ones that we're gonna have to deal with. Like Chris and I, last time we gritted our teeth and we voted for Hillary Clinton, and we did not enjoy it, but we were trying to stop all of the things that have happened. And the state races, all of that stuff matters just as much locally. But like, if you're there for your local stuff, you're going to be there for the national stuff. Like it comes down to it. Like, get involved locally and you'll see that. And then you'll also be there because you'll vote for the president too.
Well, and I think that's important because look, here we have Michigan, Florida, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So remember those, because I probably won't in a minute. And if you come back over to here, what was the first one? I know Michigan. There you go. I can do Michigan because I remember that.
Yeah, Michigan, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Ohio.
So here you go. Michigan. Look how close those races were, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And everybody in the Senate, like national politics, all of that big deal stuff, that's all up. I mean, this vote is like for a complete. If it really was a big change, you could really swing the entire system.
But here's a different one.
I don't know.
Ohio bucks the system though, right?
It's terrible.
If you go back to it and you look at Ohio here, Ohio, I mean, it's a 7-point swing, but at the same time here, I'm sure it won't take me back to the same spot too far. Oh, it does. Awesome. There's more than a 7-point swing here.
Well, that was part of it. That was part of the argument that they were talking about for gerrymandering. So if you look at the national popular vote in each state, and you look at the number of representatives elected to each party, those numbers were really varying. So, like, if you looked at that the vote for the presidential election, the swing left to right, and you see the Ohio numbers, they're hugely diverse. Or variant compared to what the actual vote was for the presidential election. So if you take that number, let's say 50 something to 40 something. It should be closer. It should be closer to what Michigan's numbers were, where there's a few seats in there. But Ohio is drastically different. And that just goes to show you that either one of two things is happening, is that all of the Democratic votes are just in the cities, Columbus, Cincinnati, and where I'm at in Cleveland. Like in those cities, you have the huge, but everything else is either is conservative, or everything has been sliced up and gerrymandered to the point where you can have an almost 50-50 popular vote, but one party can win the majority of representation because of the way the system has been drawn. That's why the census is so important right now, and getting people in charge, the Democratic Party in charge for this next round of redistricting, so it doesn't continue to be gerrymandered as bad as it is. Although, let's face it, the Democrats would try to do the exact same thing as Republicans would if they could, which is why I like Michigan's independent board, blah blah blah. But like that discrepancy is intense in Ohio. It's one of the reasons why it's so frustrating, because almost no matter what I do, I will not be able to make a big difference in this state, even if a ton of people like me vote. It's that bad.
But I think here this is a good thing, and I guess maybe Keith, if you want here, let me take the banner off a minute. I don't even know how. There's got to be a way to make big. There it goes.
Hey.
So I mean, here you go, Keith. Do you want to kind of go through some of these? I mean, I know you haven't said anything. I mean, some of this stuff in here, and then you could kind of tell us what does it look like compared to your
is
area.
it the New York Times article?
No, this
Probably.
is a Pew Research analysis.
That's going on the list of Tannerisms there. Okay, let's see here. That is by education. I just pulled it up on my computer here because I should follow along and not be sitting here reading my own shit.
Yeah, so it's by education, race, and age.
Okay, so among validated voters in 2016, wide gap among whites by education. So let's just take a quick look at there. All right, yeah. So they overall like more in favor of Clinton, and oh look, big surprise, men were more in favor of Trump than they were of Clinton, and women were more in favor of Clinton than Trump. And actually it was more in favor of Clinton than the men were in favor of Trump, which is kind of nice to see. What's also nice to see is that it was, the young people were more against Clinton. And I find that very interesting because I can't help but feel like if more of the young people had got out to vote, the election would be showing so much different there. So, yeah.
All I know is I wish this entire country was filled with black women. Look at that number. Oh, look at it. Look at it.
Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, even Hispanic women would be a vast improvement. But yeah, so
just more Medias everywhere, because that's it's so frustrating looking at these numbers.
Yeah, especially when you see that white men were the strongest supporters of Trump, and oh, look at that, non-college graduates. This just rings like from my days as as a conservative parrot, and
white non-college grad.
Before I had gone to university and was parroting a lot of like the typical conservative garbage, I would have bought into a whole lot of that, and admittedly it's kind of shameful to think, but I bought into so much of that. And then as soon as I went to university and I started challenging my beliefs instead of just sitting there digging my heels in every debate and actually taking the counterpoint aside, that's when I started to notice a shift. But when you're not like, and I don't, or sorry, this is the point that I was the point that I was trying to grab for, and then the thought train kind of derailed for a second there. Because from my conservative days, there was a strong anti-education sentiment because it was the school of hard knocks, and that's where you learned critical thinking and all of that, and that's when you learn to trust the people who were like right there in the thick of things more than scientists with their data and charts who never really got their hands dirty. And don't get me wrong, in the microcosm, sure, somebody who's spent more time in that specific situation may, not will, may have a slight better insight into how things go, but overall, they're not. You get scientists who take a more objective view and try to ask questions that will factor out variables and biases. You're gonna get a better trend. But in the non-college grad, which is just still horrifying to read, you see this anti-elitist sentiment because all them book learning's how they get so smart. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
I know that's total.
They say you're brainwashing in college.
You're a sheeple. Yeah, you go to a liberal college, you get a liberal education. It's like, whoa, what does that mean? What is a liberal education? Do you know what the term liberal means? It means lifelong learner. I don't know if you heard that, but
well, that's something that's been frustrating with politics. Is like the term liberal has been stolen. It doesn't actually mean what it means anymore.
Yeah, and this whole there's this whole anti-establishment, yet the person that they support is 110% establishment, and is actually simply convincing them to act against their own best interests, because there are people who didn't get a good enough education to learn critical thinking and get a better understanding of, say, even just mild legalese. So they won't take a look at a bill. They'll listen to whoever gets them the most excited about what they're saying it says. That's how clowns like Jordan Peterson were able to get so popular so quick with the young, supposedly disaffected white male population to pay him $80,000 a month, was because he got up there and he lied. And deliberately misrepresented Bill C-17, which included trans identities and gender identity into the protected class. Basically, you cannot discriminate against something. And he would say, you could go to jail for misgendering. Sorry, he doesn't sound like Kermit with his scrotum in a vice. You could go to jail for misgendering someone, And that's the kind of thinking that there is, because it's just this quick, easy to digest interpretation or misinterpretation, deliberate or not, regardless. And there's this whole resistance to educated thought because all them big words, you just want to sound smart. And it's actually kind of an insecurity at points, because it's like you think you're so much smarter than me. It's like, well, it's not that I think I'm smarter than you, it's that I have a different perspective than you that happens to come from a place where I've tried to parse more information so I can have a better informed approach to what we're doing here. And so it's, sadly, it's not. Sorry?
Dan Dennett, I don't know if you've seen any of his speeches, but he says the same thing. He says it for politics and for religion. Says that if you can escape the ignorance bubble, if you can enforce the ignorance bubble, all of these things essentially dissipate. You cannot maintain those kinds of messagings without a bubble of ignorance.
So what I find very interesting was that it was the non-college graduates who were white were more inclined to support Trump than the non-college graduates who weren't. And that right there is kind of an indicator as to
that's a big number,
the attitudes. And yeah, it's not a statistically insignificant number. It is. It's margined by almost 40%. 12% for college graduates, over 40% for non-college graduates.
But it also mirrors white men as well. Like, it's almost as exact same proportional numbers.
Yeah. So this to me is telling me that the Trump and the GOP have cornered their market, and they know their market, because that's the only market that really matters to them. So if they can keep everybody else from voting, and those other people from voting happen to be poor, disenfranchised people of color who have to work 2 or 3 jobs, can't take time off to go and support somebody who would get them out of power, well,
and
suddenly
their mail-in ballots never get where their mail-in ballots never get where they're supposed to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's kind of like what we were talking about in the chat earlier, was some of the different strategies that some people that I don't like specifically have used to garner more votes, right? Or to garner Gavarner. There you go. New word for you, buddy. All right, I hope you put a reel together someday, and then you like surprise me and go, "Hey, we're gonna play this new clip," and you could just pull all these things together. Anyway, there's a there was that was the discussion we're having in the chat a little bit. But that's the idea there, right? Is that there is a way to look at these things and understand them. And if the tactics Trump used was, how do I get elderly voters and, people that are in their late 50s, early 50s, I guess, to vote, I'm going to be more likely to win. And if he takes these statistics and actually analyzes them, or somebody does, that's exactly what's going to happen. Because the sad thing here is these two numbers, white men and white women, and then you come down to non-college grads that are white. That's the sad thing.
Volumes.
Yep. And so when we talk about why Trump wants to start this race war, right?
And simple messaging.
All these things,
all of his messaging is simplistic and very, very easy to understand. Trump speaks in single syllable words and fragments of sentences. No punctuation ever.
Exactly.
It needs to be as understandable. If it's using English words and somewhat coherent, that's good enough. In fact, sometimes it's completely incoherent, and somehow that's actually more accessible for some people. But in the end, really, it is something that, the anti-education, anti-elitist sentiment in this country is strong, even in the liberal sides, even in the leftists. We don't like the elitists, and but it's usually a corporate elitist, but we don't like the elitists there as well. So there's all kinds of there's problems when it comes to that, and it drives us away from the vote, but it brings people into the vote for the Republicans. And like I was saying, for 2012, for the strategists who use basic statistical analysis to find the exact campaigns that really needed a bunch of money, just flipping a couple of switches in little places changed a whole bunch of major campaigns finishes or whatever. So it really does make a big difference if you're putting the money into the right places and people are paying attention to what's going on. It's so frustrating. If you don't pay attention to what the states are doing, down ballot, it's gonna be a mess. It really will be a problem if we can't get together and put this and put a real machine together, because it's super hard to get all the people together in the Democratic Party. It's so wide.
What sorry, while you guys were talking there was something that you had mentioned about how the simplistic language reaching the people and all of that. I'm trying to find confirmation that it is who I think it was. One of the English teachers that I had when I was getting my degree, I didn't really necessarily agree with him, because at the time I was still the edgelord conservative, and makes me gross thinking about it. And he was talking about how he's an NDP supporter, which kind of put me at odds with him off the populist thoughts. And the teacher was talking about one way that he really was able to kind of reach the people was every speech he would walk up. Walk up to the mic, and, there'd be all the average Joe working people there. And what he would do is he would just kind of, how they would just put their thumb under their suspenders and run them up and down, just to kind of adjust. That was a sign that related him to the working man, essentially, is that he made himself look like he was the average Joe, because he went up and he did the same thing that they do all day, every day. And it was an action. It wasn't a slogan. It was a simple act that signaled to his supporters that I'm one of you. I'm right there with you. I support you. I believe you. I am not different from you. And it was just a simple, non-condescending way. And I've always thought it was kind of interesting. And I really wish I could figure out who the hell it was, because it would be something worth looking into, is, the little body language, because we all know that, how much 70% at least of communication is nonverbal. So if, you can bypass that, what?
Like that. That's what
why you got to break balls?
You're using the statistics to a deaf person who can't actually hear. I can't actually hear what you're saying. So the majority of my language is nonverbal.
Precisely. So, sorry, I just saw something Mike would say had said, and I thought it was kind of interesting. But yeah, troll Peterson all you want, man. I'm right there with you. All his good boys. But
So the last part of this is what the polls say, right? And this is very recent. This is as of Friday. They talk about how there was a small balance that Biden got back in the polls that we have not seen Trump get. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't change between now and November. We all know it can. But what it does mean is that at least as of this week, we're still seeing a slight rise for Biden. And I don't know. I mean, we could try and correlate it to, the momentum we're seeing in some of the states. But these are some pretty significant poll changes that, show up here. And I think it's very important given that we just had the conventions. We've had a little bit of time to think about it. And now we're starting to see some of the larger impact in the polling areas because I do think people are genuinely sick of, Trump's rhetoric, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I sure hope so.
Yeah. So, I mean, in reality, there's not a lot here. We could go through poll numbers, but to me, the bigger takeaway is we are seeing this happen. Even if it may not be sustainable, at least right now we're seeing this happen.
Yeah, it's a frustrating thing to see, but just get involved locally. I mean, if you can just get your feet wet, get involved locally, and everything will grow from there. Get your kids in, just start something locally, like with what we've been doing with Chris. Just doing something is better than nothing, but it'll also help drive, everyone into the polls. If everyone's a little bit involved, they're going to vote. If you spend any personal time. So I really think the state races, what people didn't think was going to be a big deal in 2016 turned out to be a really big deal. And swing states weren't exactly the ones that everybody thought they were. This is going to be it's an immediate interesting election. That and the polls condition the polls.
And get
so
out
what
and
you've
vote.
been saying. I've been trying to find the letters to a young contrarian, Christopher Hitchens quotation. The polls condition the polls. In the end, people spend money to get a poll. It's not cheap. It's not easy. So sometimes they're starting with a bias. So anyways, Canada superhero.
This made me so happy. And there's a reason why it made me happy. It's not happy that I saw this. It's happy that I saw it and was like, oh, I actually have I know how this is going to turn out. So this is from the Star. So a Toronto police officer was ordered to remove a Punisher patch from his uniform. So for those of you who don't know, the Punisher is a Marvel character who, all depending on which storyline, he was a former member of law enforcement or the military or FBI or somebody, former soldier essentially, who, after his family is gunned down by a mafia attack, essentially goes on a one-man killing spree, a one-man war against against crime. He's an anti-hero. He kills mercilessly those he believes are worthwhile. Some of you may have seen the Netflix run, which was actually very, very, very well done, and I love Josh Bernthal as Punisher. I think he did a great job, but that's getting off topic here. So a Toronto police officer is being faced with internal discipline after he was caught in public wearing a patch on his uniform that had the message, "Make no mistake, I am the sheepdog," and the black skull in the middle of the badge here. The black skull happened to be the Punisher skull. And of course, he's a vigilante, acts outside the law, kills, doesn't exactly abide by the whole, serve and protect thing.
Hey, I got to stop you a second.
Sure.
If you go to this thing right here, it almost looks like the Canadian flag has a black or a Blue Lives Matter Canadian flag.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm afraid to look that up, but I've got my my Google shame mode going, aka Google Incognito. So I'm just gonna quickly Google Canada Blue Lives Matter, and I'm gonna gag a little bit as I do it. Don't mind me. Yeah, that is a Canadian version of the Police Lives Matter. So the officer, he was seen at a news conference at a public school, which was intended to draw attention to road safety issues as students go back to school. It was found that the officer was wearing the patch, and the officer was identified and was directed to remove it immediately. Who is this? Toronto police spokesperson said that it's not approved nor appropriate to be wearing it on the uniform. It's now a matter of internal discipline and cannot give anything further. So the officer has never been named. They're protected. Citing the Police Services Act, which I'm very, very wary of. But this drew a lot of negative attention to the Toronto police, because again, in recent times we have seen a lot of pushback against militaristic police tactics and behaviors, and basically police abuses of power, which is probably long overdue. I think just a little bit. So yeah, so then it goes on. They're talking about the phrase. It says, I may walk among the sheep, but make no mistake, I am the sheepdog. Very authoritarian, I am watching them, but I will also bite them to get them to do what I want. Authoritarian, controlling type of behavior. And there's a US website that sells a shirt with the full motto, and the American flag offers customers a chance to support law enforcement by buying the product. Big yikes. And it's they're claiming that it's to spread that law enforcement officers stand between the communities and chaos, which really question that. So it's they were questioned what the message that logo would send, saying that if the message was associated with punishing criminals, that is inconsistent with the role of what the police actually is. The role of the police is not to punish. The role of the police is to enforce the law and bring people into the justice system. So that's the logo. I mean, being associated with law enforcement is problematic, especially because law enforcement officers policing George Floyd demonstrations have been seen brandishing the logo. Yeah. So this is where I got excited, because I saw this and I said, I know how Marvel has written this character and how that they've written the character to feel about this type of thing. So that's where the second article comes from, and it's from Bleeding Cool. And if you haven't read the Marvel comic story, this article is actually from 2019 about a when did this comic come out? I don't know, came out a few years ago. So if you haven't read it by now, you may not, and so I'm probably not going to ruin anything. So,
but spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Anyways. So essentially, they talk about how the Punisher responds to this happening in the real world, and they do it in frames, and it's a beautiful way that they handle it. So what happens is Frank Castle is cornered by two police officers who they recognize him, and they get excited because they say, we're part of a group that supports what you do. We're very much in favor.
Quick question. Can I
Sure.
show this? Is this a copyright thing? I don't have to worry about that, do I?
I don't think so.
Okay.
There would have to be like a vision. Yeah, but there would also have to be visual representation, like logging on any video analyses. And if we have that, if they're watching what we are doing, that specifically,
a better thing,
and we're in trouble.
It's a waste of their
basically
time.
audio now. So,
so as you can see, the officers, they have him cornered, and then they recognize him. And if Tanner is kind enough to scroll down here, they take a selfie with him and say, we're part of an underground group of police officers that fully support what you do. And the instant that they say, we believe in you, Frank Castle reacts and goes, what the hell is this? And the cops say, it's not the whole force. Most of them want to kill you and put you in the ground, but some of us believe in what you do. You're doing whatever, and we're doing whatever we can to take back the streets. So Castle basically grabs them, takes the picture that they have, which has his logo on it, he rips it up. And he goes on to say, I will only say this once. We're not the same. You took an oath to uphold the law. You help people. I gave all that up a long time ago. You don't do what I do. Nobody does. You boys need a role model. His name is Captain America, and he'd be happy to have you. So then the officers get a little bit... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the officers get a little bit indignant. and they say, you don't like others following your example? Too bad. So Castle says, if I find out who you are trying to do what I do, I will come for you next. And the cops say, oh, is that a threat? And he goes, yeah, it is. So police officers, the Punisher cares about what you do. You are not the Punisher. You are an officer of the law. You are to uphold the law and the justice system. It is flawed, and there are problems with it. It is not your job to try to be the net that catches whoever falls through it. You're not. You're to uphold an oath that you took. The second that you start to think that taking the law into your own hands and playing judge, jury, and executioner is the right thing to do.
You're bringing out the Judge Dredd here.
Yeah,
You gotta do
exactly.
it. You gotta do it.
Guess what? You are the very thing that you swore to protect the public against. And that's the bottom line. And that's why I love that. And because I know it's idealistic and the police are not that. They do not, always uphold the oath. We have so many problems with the militarization of the police, the overarching of the police, and a chronic underfunding of police mental health resources, and continuously rely on them to do things that they're not trained to do, that they shouldn't be trained, they shouldn't need to do. And we need to stop seeing them as this judge, jury, and executioner, because that's not what they are. They are literally just there as an agent of justice who steps in when necessary and does not assume that their way is the only way. That's the authoritarian. So I got so excited.
I always think of them as a guide, right? They should be the boat, the ferryman at the river Styx, right?
Yeah.
Like their job there is to guide the people from one civilian life into the judicial system to be judged. Like they're a ferryman, but they will also protect those people while they're on that transit, whether they are guilty or not. Like, and I think that's just a loss of context and also a politicization that people in all over the world. This is the problem. Like all over Europe, in Canada, throughout places in certain areas of Africa and Asia, Hong Kong, anyone? There are a ton of these situations happening where we have what used to be public servants no longer representing the public and protecting the public. They're foot soldiers for those in power, and they've lost the point. They've lost the whole idea of what they were supposed to be there for, and then we also analyze why they were started in some places. In some cases, they were basically established to protect landowners and property owners, like the Madisonian quote of the protecting the minority of the opulent. Like it really is, this is a manifestation of like all of these systems that we see. And so like there are problems from the ground up, and that's why this is a great example. Like the Frank Castle stuff it's an interesting parallel, and I always find that it's interesting how science fiction and fantasy, they really hit it. They hit it on the head sometimes, but not enough people look into it. Isaac and Arthur C. Clarke. I mean, those guys, they were looking at real world stuff and applying a fantasy label to it. But like, if you really think about what's going on and things like the Foundation and stuff, like you're looking at what's really happening. And in some cases you can actually predict what is happening now by going through those really unique thought processes of people who were forward thinkers a long time ago, or even the cycles of history that are repeating themselves right now. It's so frustrating. Yeah,
and one of the so the reason why they did this, and apparently this this issue was released last year, is because the writer noted that when Castle was originally written back in the 70s, the Punisher was a villain, not an anti-hero. So he was originally brought out to be somebody who the heroes fought against. That's what I'm reading here.
Okay, yes and no. Yes and no.
He's an anti-hero,
always meant to be the anti-hero. Yes, he is.
Well, he was conceived as the villain, right? But then it comes out that he ends up being written, and then it's like, oh well, he's kind of an anti-hero. He's I don't want to say lawful evil because it's not necessarily that. I just don't know. I wouldn't know where on the D&D scale. Sorry, this is for Mike here because he wants somebody to say something. Hang on one second. I am the law. Is that better, Mike? How's that for you?
Oh.
So yeah, I thought that might be a fun little conversation and a way to bring the fact that I'm a little bit of a dork and a nerd into the mix here.
All right, moving on.
Yeah.
No,
Sorry. I hit somebody else.
No contradictions here. None. No.
Yeah, I don't. We're not gonna get into superhero lore. Blah blah. I'm staying. We're gonna stay far away from that.
That's another episode.
That's a whole nother episode, and we're already an hour and a half in, and we got more to go. So for the last segment, we really wanted to readdress the $15 an hour discussion, right? And there's a couple of reasons I want to do it. And it's because I have different information that I didn't have before when we did this. And I think it was a year? Was it a little over a year ago?
Somewhere around there. We've been bits and pieces. I mean, we've been talking about the $15 an hour thing since it started, which hell, that was way before Trump was anywhere in the picture. Because that was a campaign situation in 2015, but it was also 2012. There were politicians that were talking about it. So it's been a while.
Yeah. And so the idea, this idea came behind is because as I'm working with this candidate, one of the big things is what's your positions? And he's going through them. And I said, well, here's the deal. You want me to tell you what's the difference between you and your candidate, the guy you're running against? He doesn't post facts. So I'm not against $15 an hour. But what I'm hearing is that you need to at least explain why. And I think it's important, and maybe it's just because what is our show done? You know, like 238 episodes in, and now we're going back to YouTube, which is it's kind of funny because that's how we started. We came back, blah blah blah. Anyway, so now we're moving back into the video realm. And I like YouTube almost more as a medium to some extent than I did just a straight Spreaker podcast, because it's nice that the chats work better than Spreaker's podcast chat and stuff like that. But the big thing here, right, is the idea behind what does it mean to be different than your opponent? And if you aren't going to be different than your opponent, then there's no point in putting your information out there. I don't know who keeps calling me, but I put this person like
calling on your phone.
Because I have a Mac and every bloody thing in my house is connected. Literally, this person has called me 7 times.
Ruh-roh.
Anyway, I might have to step away for a second. So
you're connected to local politics now.
Yeah. Well, they don't have my number. Trust me.
Oh, yeah. I get calls from Holland, Michigan, and the general area all the time. It's like Michigan is calling you. It's like, really, the whole state. That's cool.
What
That's
started
awesome.
me down this journey was starting to do some research into his belief, right? You know, why did he want that? And I said, I went back to some of our old stuff, and I said, well, what's important from that, right? And so one of the big things is this.
Okay.
And here, Hannah, I'll let you take care. You can jump in here.
So yeah, basically more than 20 states in Washington, D.C. are ringing in the new year with minimum wage increase. This was something that was a big deal. And the Michigan wage floor is increasing by 20 cents, so $9.65 per hour. We have a variety of minimum wages throughout the country. Every state sets their own thing. There's the national minimum wage, and then some states are above and beyond. And so this year's wage is a small step minimum wage increase that will take place every year this decade by 2030. So minimum wage will increase $12.05 per hour. Basically, what we're looking at is, you know, there was the argument to get to the $15 an hour or the incremental to get it up to that point. In the U.S., the 21 states have the minimum wage equal to the federal minimum, which is only $7.25 per hour, and it's been the same place 30 something years, as far as my awareness is there. Like that stagnation is, it doesn't even follow with inflation, let alone the fact that there have been statistical analyses that say that if you make minimum wage, you literally cannot afford a place to live anywhere in the United States. You cannot afford to live anywhere in the United States. I find that does bear repeating, because unless you have a family member or somebody who does have a place and you can use them as a resource, but if you don't, you are screwed. You are genuinely screwed. And the one thing that they say, one of the major indicators of whether or not someone will actually be successful is if you have a roof over your head, and it isn't something that is so insanely intense that you can live. You can basically have the basic human rights. Then you can work on your bootstraps, right? But like if every day it is a fight just to stay alive, this changes whether or not you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, because you're literally just trying to stay alive. And a lot of the arguments that come here is like that $7.25 per hour, high school kids, you're starting your career. Well, a lot of people don't quite have that. And right now with, I think 18% unemployment right now, that minimum wage stuff is turning into a really big deal. And there's a lot of people that are trying their best to just keep themselves above water.
Yeah. Well, and so what this article, talks about, right, is your differences, like you were saying, and they talk about how they can increase it by 2030, but by I get it, by 2030 though, we're going to be farther behind, and that's the big sad thing about this whole thing is people want to increase, workers' wages, this and that, but we're gonna do it over so many years. Well, I'll tell you what, if it takes a 2030, if it takes 10 more fucking years to hit $15 an hour, we're just going to be even farther behind.
Yeah, $15 an hour right now is like a minimum. Like that at $15 an hour, you can afford an apartment in most cities. Even the $15 an hour, like you're looking at, I'm talking the Midwest, I'm talking non-major metropolitan areas, but like at $15 an hour, you can get a place to live. You can somewhat keep yourself fed. You're not going to be able to afford car payments and stuff like that. It's like the old McDonald's budget breakdown, right? When they had a thing where they were talking about with your McDonald's salary inside that budgetary breakdown, there was $0 allocated to heat. You know what I mean? Like
that
so
boiled
like
my blood.
Yeah, and so like the $15 an hour is going to keep you alive. If you look at American basic standards of living right now, $15 an hour will keep you alive in our current budget. Not in 2030, it won't. You know what I mean? Like that's a number for now. And so that idea of the incrementalism in some cases is the same thing with Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. We have the idea of incrementalism. We need to work on the police. We need to do something. Actually, you know what? We need a big jump. We need a big jump now because we need to make major changes to the system to make sure that everyone is given the basic unalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. The funds to stay alive is included in that. And so I would say that, the basic human rights should include, a higher minimum wage in this case is a fair and clear example.
Exactly. And so, when we talk about that, what's the one top thing that people complain about is going to kill jobs.
Oh yeah.
And people want to continue to say this. And if we look at my notes, right, and this is what I want to talk about to some extent before we get into, is it going to kill job? A comfortable salary for a family is $80,000 a year. So between you and your wife, $80,000 a year, or you and your husband, or your wife and your wife,
partner,
whatever you want to call it, 80 grand is a comfortable living for a family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So 2 full-time income at $15 an hour, how much is that a year? With no overtime.
I'm going to guess somewhere in the 70s.
$60K.
60. Okay. Yeah.
So
and that's that's pushing it, but yeah.
Yeah. Current minimum wage is only $9.65 an hour in Michigan. Federal minimum wage is $7.65 an hour.
Mhm.
Federal minimum wage. So you're looking at $20K or $40K for a family. So now, Hannah, how does $15 an hour get a family to feeling comfortable? If feeling comfortable is 80 grand, how does the family feel
I don't-
comfortable with two people making minimum wage?
So I don't think the minimum wage argument in the United States is the same as like a UBI argument or a comfortability argument. Like I really think that like the minimum wage thing is like it's not so much to be comfortable; it's to keep you alive. That's just the way the United States is. We're utilitarian so far that we're not looking to have a comfortable, mentally sound family structure. We're looking for a resource, workers, laborers, and we're going to utilize that resource until it's gone,
How
and
can
then we're
you
going to move it
stay-
on. Well, that's what
how
I'm
can
saying.
you-
It's
hold
like
on. How
the
can you-
system is like that.
I'm gonna get pissy with you a minute. How can you stay alive if you can't afford your own car? If you can't afford to put a roof over your head? At $15 an hour, you can't afford all those things. You both can't afford to work and pay for childcare. You know that, right?
Oh, I know.
You get
I
that,
know.
right? Like your wife did not have a normal job while you worked. She owned her own business and were able to work around your hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically like I said, it's you're looking at the bare minimum, and in some cases, it's still not even going to work. If you have multiple kids involved, you have your tax incentives that are going to help you out a little bit, but then the amount of money that you get from your tax system on rebates and stuff like that is nowhere near the cost to actually keep people alive. It is the bare minimum, and my perspective, what I said a little while ago, it's $15 an hour now is almost not enough. You know what I mean? Like not in 2030. Now it's almost not enough. And so like if you're looking at not having bodies in the streets, $15 an hour is a way to keep you there. I don't think that's even enough. I really do think that, UBI and having a certain level of fiscal equality throughout the entire country is going to be the norm and should be the norm. But essentially, it should be immediately, without question, $15 an hour, and it probably should be higher, but that's just the number that everyone's going through, and we have to talk about politics, we have to talk about marketing. That's a thing that is stuck, and we have to kind of work with what is in there. Like we have to deal with, the American hive mind, right? The $15 an hour is a place where a lot of people are comfortable. It doesn't seem like too much. It doesn't seem like too little. People like you and I, and even this Canadian guy, we would probably say that it would be a little bit higher. It would be better. But in the end,
he might not. He might just think.
I think he would.
might think everybody should just get an even salary. Oh, that's me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I don't.
That
disagree.
wasn't him.
Yeah.
I am.
In the end, it's going to be one of those things where like we're all probably going to think $15 an hour isn't quite enough, and people should have another supplemental something that should be given. But if you're looking at the bare minimum utilitarian perspective, it should at least be there, not the $725, I believe, and the $965 in Michigan. Like it should be across the board, the United States, 15.
So,
and that's not even enough, but it still should be there.
So I grabbed Canadian statistics because in Alberta, for a little while there, for a little while, our minimum wage was $15 an hour. As of October 1st, 2018, minimum wage was in Alberta for everyone $15 an hour. However, once our Conservatives retook power, guess what they rolled back, because it was something the NDP did, and it was bad. Because people actually had to get paid a reasonable, let's rephrase that, a more reasonable amount of money, because cost of living in Calgary is significantly higher, courtesy of having all of the oil tycoons buying up land, and Calgary spreading itself so thin that our property taxes are actually super, super high.
But wait, we have a rodeo.
Yeah.
You
Fun
do
fact.
have a rodeo. Where's your rodeo income? Damn it.
Yeah, no shit. Fun fact, actually, Calgary, in terms of land area, is, I believe, the largest city in Canada, bigger than Toronto, but we have a third of the population of Toronto. So whereas Toronto's, of course, all packed in, they built up with all their high rises and everything. Calgary spread out because all the oil money meant people could buy houses of their own. So our property taxes are significantly higher. But somehow that was 4 years of NDP rules' fault, not our inability to wean ourselves off of the teat of oil and gas when all of a sudden we realized, oh shit, they don't care about us.
So question. When it was $15 an hour, did you guys see this massive influx of businesses just, we can't do it, and they closed down? I mean, was it like this like economic disaster?
You know, it actually wasn't.
Yeah.
When we saw big corporations leave was when all of a sudden the UCP gave them big tax cuts. That's when they moved their offices.
Oh, you're saying so like the corporate socialism is a problem, but actual socialism for
it's
people.
Weird how that works, eh? Yeah. So in general, so anybody who works full time, so which in Alberta is 36 plus hours a week, has to be paid a minimum of $15 an hour. However, if you are under 18 and work less than 28 hours a week, guess what? They only have to pay you $13 an hour. So suddenly we can start exploiting the young people again. It's easy to take that workforce, which again is kind of funny given that that's the demographic that refuses to work those minimum wage jobs because they were told that those jobs, you don't want those are bad.
Yeah. You should go to college and rack up a massive, massive debt, and then you should get that job that you weren't going to get.
So, I mean, $15 in, Canada Gooses isn't quite the same as $15 an hour in American Eagles or Freedom Eagles. Sorry, let's call them what they are.
There you go. That's better.
So,
name of next week's episode, the Freedom Eagles.
Freedom Eagles versus...
That's what they should have named the Washington Football League instead of Washington.
That's amazing.
I mean,
the Freedom Eagles. Damn
the
it,
Cobra Chickens. 15 Cobra Chickens.
How could they not have named the Washington football team the Freedom Eagles?
Yeah,
Instead,
that's
they
a
just named
really
the Washington football.
That's
That's
so.
only a placeholder name, isn't it? I think they might still change. All right, petition everybody right now. Stop what you're doing. Go over and petition them for the Washington Freedom Eagles because that's just the bomb. All right,
Awesome.
moving past that. So there is this survey that they've done and that they're looking at that talks about what we've been talking about, right? And they're looking at what happens with the increase of wages to the economy. And we've talked about this at nauseum on this show. I mean, 238 effing episodes. Fuck. How many times have we had to have this conversation? If you give people more money, they will pay more money back into the system unless you become so rich that you feel like hoarding it so your children don't have to do anything but get political positions handed to them from your orange disdained.
Well, quick question. So I received $3,400. Yes, $3,400 in incentive money from the government because of the COVID pandemic. I spent all of that into my local economy. All of it. Every bit went into local economy, local things. So I'm a middle-class worker and engineer, so technically blue collar, white collar. But like all of that money went into the system. None of it was hoarded. None of it was thrown into a bank account and just sitting there. I'm assuming, Chris, you're probably in that same boat. So like, at least maybe not entirely, but the majority of that money was used for things.
We spent money on the house. We spent money on some of the kids' stuff. I won't tell you I spent all of it, but I spent quite a larger portion of it. And we're both looking at getting newer cars, so it's like there's the rest of that money going.
It's economic drive that's going to be happening. So the middle class, technically, where we are, you and I, that would technically be the middle class in the United States. And the money that comes to us drives American economy. It's plain and simple. So like looking at this middle class, and this would be lower middle class, getting at the $15 an hour, but looking at the money that would go into that, those people who would go from 7, 9, $10 an hour, up to 15. Majority of that money is going to go into the local economies. It's going to go into the state economies. It's going to the American economy. All of these things are the purchasing power of the middle class is a direct correlation. And in fact, in some cases, some economists would call it a causation for the strength of an economy. I mean, it's plain and simple. And this is an awesome area of where we could actually see that. And I love the fact that, you know, the steady national GDP growth that they call out here is also confidence among small business owners. All they're saying is that when you strengthen the middle class, when you strengthen the buying power of lower incomes, they can actually do more, and it actually benefits small businesses and small economies way more. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's see, in Ontario there was a big uproar. They raised the minimum wage at one point. They were under Liberal leadership, and they raised their minimum wage. I think it was just to like $14 an hour or what have you. And there was this Tim Hortons franchisee. So it's you independently own the franchise, you run it. It's a way of legally protecting the greater corporation and still making billions of dollars and never really having to pay out for any sort of settlements, because you can make it look like it makes less money. And it's a whole lot of jargon that the average person, i.e. me, doesn't really fully comprehend, because there's a lot of technical terms that I don't get. And there were owners who sent out this memo about how they were cutting hours and they were reducing breaks in order to offset the fact that they had to pay their workers more in order for them to keep maintaining what they're living. The ironic thing was that the owners of this particular franchise had this little tantrum of theirs from their summer home down in a tropical climate, because their luxury is more important than their workers' ability to make a living. Because, you know, pulling up your bootstraps involves suffering so somebody else can make a lot of money. And that's a great infuriating aspect of this, what we see as the free market these days. And there was all of the right wing people were like, oh, you see, like, oh, business owners, they're crumbling. And it's like, hang on a second. They're losing. They're upset because they may not be able to cling to every single luxury of theirs. Really? That's their problem? And they're supposed to represent the people. They're the ones we're supposed to look out for? No. See, the problem is that when money goes up the chain to, you know, people who are extraordinarily wealthy, i.e. corporations, billionaires, etc., that money doesn't stay in the local economy. It doesn't. It gets hoarded, which would make for a hilarious episode of Hoarders if we could start going through the bank accounts and assets of a lot of these people. Would be terrific. Would really make me laugh to see them have to explain why they deserve that. And then,
or even find all of their money, because they probably don't even know where it all is. I have so much. I don't know where it's at.
Offshore. Yeah, and like you were saying with Trump, you know, and how he would dissolve companies and then sell off all the assets so he could make money and hide it. So it'll either get hoarded and hidden away and tucked away, or it will be spent offshore. It won't be spent in the local economy. You give the people who live in that economy more money, they're going to pay their local farmers for food. They're going to pay local construction workers to build things for them. They're going to pay local technicians. They'll pay local electricians. You know, all of these things are done locally because that's what's there. They're not going overseas to hide their money. They're keeping it there. They're keeping it circulating through the economy. And so that's why this whole trickle-down economics thing is a failed experiment. Yeah. We all know that. Everybody knows that.
There's a billionaire named Nick Hanauer. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a huge proponent, and he's part of actually this billionaire class of people who are saying, we actually need higher taxes. We want to pay more taxes, and it's really interesting to some of the stuff they're doing. So it's Hanauer. So look up Nick Hanauer. One of the things that caught me is that he basically he owns a pillow company, and he says, "Here's the thing. This is a very simple explanation. I, as a billionaire, have a family and a big giant house filled with rooms and all kinds of beds and all that kind of stuff. I need a certain number of pillows. I'm going to buy pillows for myself from my company, and I'm going to fill my house with pillows. All the beds all have pillows. They have extra pillows. There's pillows in the closets, whatever. The number of pillows that I would ever need beyond any reasonable doubt is always going to be less than the number of pillows that well-paid employees would need. Simple as that. If you pay your employees well, they're going to have houses. They're going to buy new houses. They're going to buy new things. They're actually going to buy your stuff. Well-paid employees will buy your stuff. Like, look at a Walmart employee buying things at Walmart. These are
I mean,
all
that's all they can afford to buy, but
but still, like, these are all concepts. Like, if you pay a Walmart employee more money, they will spend more money in Walmart. It's fairly simple economics. And so, like, this $15 an hour, that money goes back into the economy immediately. These aren't people that are scamming the system. $15 an hour for a high school kid isn't going to buy him a new Mustang that he's going to go wrap around a tree because he's being stupid. These are people who really do need this money, and they need to stay alive, and they need housing, they need food, they need shelter. Like, this is the basics this is the basics of humanity, the basic human rights. And I really think that it's still the same message, maybe new information and new data from Chris's links here. But I don't think our overall perspective has changed much. I really don't.
No, I think what it does is it lends just a different lens to it, right?
Yeah.
And it lends some data behind it that we didn't have before. And I thought it was a good discussion. We probably went longer on it than we probably had. I mean, we talked about this. It's been a staple of our discussion for way too long.
It's been a while since we've talked about it, though. Like UBI and all that kind of stuff. I actually did get some serious conversation when it came to Boyce and his campaign and everything that he's been like part of. I mean, we saw socialist income talked about more in this most recent primary election than I can remember in American history. It's pretty cool.
Yep. All right, on to quick saves. As we wrap the show up, we always do a quick save segment. So this article found its way from a friend of mine who texted this to me to say, can you believe that Rick Snyder, who we have not only shitted on, but advocated he should be arrested, is voting for Biden? Which I feel a little ashamed, but not really. I still think let him vote and then go to jail. I'm okay. Just go to jail, but go ahead and vote first, and then let's put you in jail.
Or he can vote from jail?
No, you can't. So.
Oh, right. Once you're labeled a prisoner or a criminal, you're never allowed to vote again.
Whole nother segment. We can get into that. Different night, not tonight. But
even in states when you've been allowed to, you have to pay all your fines first.
Yeah. What the funny thing is he's public. I mean, like, and maybe this just kind of goes back to like Kasich was at the Democratic convention this year, and he just wanted to go, okay, fine. Kasich isn't a horrible individual, but you have somebody that's like ultra pro-life from a state that doesn't understand the difference in voting for people versus saying, I hate abortion. Like, that's all they vote for.
Yeah.
And anyway, so it's just weird that he was there, but it's weirder, that our governor who has former governor, you're right. Sorry. Our former governor who has essentially done not a damn thing about Flint was probably pretty tied into making money off that, is now going to vote for Biden, which is even sadder what state that puts us in, that guy's voting for Biden. I mean, the only worst comparison I think could be is if Jeremiah Bannister came back on the show and was like, as much as I hate leftists, I'm voting for Biden this year just because it's controversial. And you're like, okay, dude. All right, buddy. But, like, I just can't think of a worse thing. Like, really, like, why?
The number of Trump supporters, the number of conservatives that are comfortable with voting for Biden just goes to show you where Biden really is on the political spectrum. I mean, in all reality, like the centrist pro-government thing that is the Joe Biden campaign, it's comfortable enough for people who are career Republicans to vote for. Just shows you that that's the angle they're leaning towards. They're leaning centrist. They're leaning converted Republicans more than they're leaning Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders and Kamala. They're going Kamala Harris and Joe Biden centrism. You know,
Hmm.
it's weird to see Rick Snyder going that way, but you know what? Cheers, whatever. If you're gonna help, awesome.
Oh,
Keith,
man.
you're next, buddy. And I'm not going to
So
say the name of your website.
if I say it, will that mean we have to have the explicit tag?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So I'm not going to say it. I'm not. Or sorry, I'm not going to say it in its entirety. One of the podcasts that I listen to, they're part of they're now an LLC. They run several different podcasts. They started a website called You Have to effingvote.com, which will directly link you to vote.org. And from
Good
there,
for
what you can
them.
do is you can check the status of your voter registration. As Tanner was mentioning earlier when he had us on vote.org for his story, the other story earlier, it essentially what you need, 15 days to register before the election? Tanner?
Basically, it's
Yeah.
15 days
Okay.
in Michigan.
So with that, what you can do is you can go through, you can put in your information, you can do that and verify that you are on the voter registry, because apparently there's a lot of people who aren't anymore. So if you can take 30 seconds to make sure that you're registered to vote, and if you can find out that you're not and you can change that, guess what? You can get out, you can vote. You can help be a part of getting Trump and everything that we see that's wrong with the GOP out of that office, and the states can stop being a laughing stock at the rest of the world. Because I'm sorry, a leader who cares more about Kim Jong-un's health than his own people's? Why do you deserve that? Your people deserve better. You know, America deserves better than that.
I don't know if we deserve better, but
people
just
deserve better than that.
Humanity does. Yeah.
So
So Americans' position is bad.
check your voter registration. Make sure that you can vote. So on, what is it, November 3rd? 2 days after Trump said that they're supposed to be ready to disperse a vaccine that's definitely not going to be ready by then, but is strategically placed so that he can line himself up with it to make himself look better. Guess what? You can get out and you can say, no, I don't buy that. I don't believe that. I don't want you putting another Gorsuch, another Kasich, another Scalia on the bench when poor Ruth Bader Ginsburg can't hold out anymore, when the spite in her bones takes over.
She's like a little bird.
She deserves that peace.
Yeah.
Vote to give her peace. Vote to give our BG
Her a break.
Give her that chance to know that she is leaving the country that she served for so many years in the hands of somebody who will continue to serve accordingly, who will continue to serve the people to their best with integrity.
Yeah. Yeah. So my quick save, there's an empty room there, and there's one guy standing in front. In 1991, Bernie Sanders took his position in the House of Representatives after being the mayor of Burlington, and this was him speaking out against the war in the Gulf. No one was there, not a single person. It's been like this for years and years and years. There's a few people in the United States governmental system in all three branches that really did exemplify anti-war, humanistic perspectives, and doing the right thing. They don't always bubble up to the top. In Bernie's place, he's been a good advocate for people. And this is just a really interesting example to see someone giving a speech in a empty room to try to stop a war that was problematic at best, incredibly dangerous and terrible at worst, and chemical warfare and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. I saw the picture on Reddit, and someone was just like, "You remember in 1991 when one guy tried to do something? You know, he tried to. He was a first term House of Representatives, and he did the right thing. And you look at certain people's histories and certain people's records, and they do the right thing. In all reality, that's what we need more of. We need people that'll push against the grain and do the right thing. So it's a nice quick save. In a moment that I just saw, and I just said I'd like to see more of that from more people in our government.
Fair enough, buddy. Fair enough. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. A little longer of an episode than we're used to. Yeah, a little longer than we're used to. So it's definitely time to wrap it up. We'll be back next week with another Canadian segment. This one not involving Marvel.
No.
No, and get your birdie picture. It's over it's over with, man. Like maybe
I
we'll
know
let
it is.
Hannah cry in the corner for a minute. We'll just like put the camera on him and let him cry for a full minute.
No, see, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share my Instagram picture of my Bernie sign that has duct tape on it that says Biden. I'm gonna make that modification this week and we'll put it out.
There you go. Hey, you don't even have to donate to your own Democratic Party, which you should be doing anyway. If you want
Already
to,
do.
if you want to join us live every week, we are on YouTube now. Live every week. We encourage you to go over there and sub to us. That way you get notification. We're exploring different means. I'm trying to be able to explore posting on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. It did not work last week as well as I thought it would. It's still up there. If you want to see the atrocity on Facebook, you can. But there's the cost to do both of them at once is just too high for us right now. Especially with a lot of our money being re-donated back out to different campaigns for the political season. Because we are spending a lot of time and effort and money in the political arena this year. Also, in the future here, we'll be having some amazing guests on and different things. It'll be very Michigan-based, but maybe Hannah will get a chance to get his local candidates in Ohio. There's got to be somebody running Democrat there.
There is, but they're not interested in talking to an atheist.
All right.
They are so middle class or middle ground and centrist. It's like little Bidens all over the place.
Well, you never know until you try. So anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all and have an amazing night.
Breonna Taylor's killers are still free. Don't forget. Say her name.
Arrest them. Oh
Damn it.
my